All right, good evening and welcome to the City Council special session of Water Tower. Mr.
Mayor and Council, we've been working on this for a little bit of time now. Originally, we were going to tear down the Lindsay Tower. It's been turned off and offline since, what do we think,
2014, I think it was.
14, 13, somewhere in
In that
there.
range.
But before that, we had talked about, can we keep it or do we need to demo it? And then about time we did the water supply plan, we thought, ooh, we might be able to use it for a non-pot source and put the pipes over to Reeves Park, because they were doing the softball fields, and maybe have a non-pot water to water with, and this would be a good bowl of water to use to irrigate with. So that's what we've been working on. Short of it is the numbers are not working out like we want. It's very expensive, but I'll let Ken go through all the different iterations we've done to try to find a way to make it work. But we'll go with it from there. It doesn't seem to pencil out,
Okay.
but we'll talk from there.
We'll go through it.
We'll show you what we got.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody, or good evening, I guess, by now. My name's Ken Giannone, by the way. I know some of you, for those who I haven't met. My name's Ken Giannone. I work for the Utilities Department. Yeah, we'll just go through. I just have some slides here to hopefully help make this a little clearer, what we're discussing. But as Chris said, there's a picture of Lindsay Tower. It's obviously not in the best shape. We have not used it for more than 10 years. We actually planned to demolish it, I think in 2015. Right around that same time, we got our strategic water supply plan that recommended, why don't you look into a recycled water plan? And like Chris said, it would feed Reeves Park and a couple other properties in that area. So we said, well, let's hold off and see, maybe we can use this tower for that. Let's not do anything just yet. But since then, we've not been able to really fully evaluate that recycled water plan. So right now, the tank's sitting there. You can see the condition. And part of the problem, the reason we took it offline is, I don't know if you can see that, but because it's lower elevation than our other tanks. So there's a little tiny band up top, 5-10 feet, where it cycles up and down, but the whole rest of that tank just sits there. And as a utility, that's always potential for trouble because it can get stagnant. And we didn't think it was a good idea operationally, so we took it out of service for that reason. And just as we said, currently and you don't need me to say any of this, it's got rust on it. If you've driven by it once, you've seen it. Everywhere you look, it's as much rust as paint right now. Good news is the steel is fine. We've had somebody look at it. Steel's in fine shape, so it can be painted and reused if we decided to. On the negative side, again, because of the age, the paint on there is lead-based. It's not a disaster by any means, but it costs a little more to deal with it, that's all. So it's not a major hassle, but it is, unfortunately, makes these numbers a little worse than they might be otherwise. What we're hoping to do, we'd love to get there, and as we said, the numbers may not get us there, but the idea was we'd like to rehabilitate the tank, paint a nice kind of off-white type color. OU has indicated they'd like to put some logos on it, an OU and maybe an SEC logo on it. And it's a very visible location, as I'm sure you all know. It's right next to the stadium and everything else. So it'd be pretty cool. It'd be a neat thing if we can make it work. And ideally, we'd love to get it done before football season this fall. So what we decided to do, again, we decided 10 years ago this tank was not going to work for us. But when this came up, we said, let's look at this, top to bottom. Let's kind of start over from scratch. Make sure there's no way we can justify using this tank. So basically, there's 4 alternatives that we can consider here. First, we can rehab it, and we'll look at that recycled water type system, which we'll discuss here in a moment. We also looked at possibly rehabilitating it and putting it back in service as water supply to see if that would work, see if there's a way, if there was new technology or something else that help makes that work. Number 3 is, for better or worse, demolish the tank. I mean, we were done with it. Our plan was to demolish it, 9 years ago. Worst come to worst, that's what we'd have to do now. And finally, another option that we can discuss it is, if we can't use it for any of our uses, we could always just, it'd be difficult for us to paint it as a trust, but it could be painted and just stand there basically as a large billboard, as a, kind of funny shape, but very interesting looking billboard, and put whatever logos we want on it, and, it's pretty cool looking, and it might be something to consider.
Ken, what would you use for ballast in there? You're saying?
Yeah, really what I was told, the best thing is sand. You can fill it with water as well. We're told sand is more stable and it cause corrosion and everything else. So you just basically, yeah, just pump it up there and then it's just for, just be sanding there forever till, whatever, some
sand.
future generation decides to demolish it. And so look at alternative number one, which is a recycled water system. Actually, this seemed like a great idea. We're using effluent from the wastewater plant. We can get for irrigation purposes only, so it's only for sprinkling grass and that kind of thing. We can charge 85% of our commercial rate, which is fantastic if you think about it, because it's water that otherwise will go into the river. Our strategic 2060 strategic water supply plan did call this out and say, hey, it's something you want to look at. There's probably 10 large property owners, including Reeds Park. It might just be enough critical mass there to actually make this profitable. So in 2022, we contracted with Allen Plummer, and they said, look at this, evaluate it, tell us what'll work, what won't work, what the cost might be. And they submitted that plan to us late last fall, and we've been kind of talking about it with them ever since. Here's kind of just a rough idea, map what it would look like. The Norman Water Reclamation Facility is kind of lower left corner there, the green. These various kind of purple-looking properties with name, those are the customers we're pretty confident would be willing to buy irrigation water from us at a reduced rate. And if you look up top, the blue dot, that's where Lindsay Tower is. And the idea would be we would just, the pink lines would just be piping, we would pump up to Lindsay Tower, and then this system would just kind of float off that and send irrigation water to all these different customers. One kind of not so good news, if you have the upper left corner, we'd probably have to put 40,000 feet of pipe in the ground to make this work, and 40,000 feet of pipe can cost a pretty penny, unfortunately. But at any rate, that was the first thing we did. We want to look at see what could we earn from this. Just from the new customers, again, we looked at 5 years worth of data, what these customers are using for irrigation water, and got the average of each of them. Works out to, at the rate we're pretty sure we could charge, we could earn around $35,000 just for the recycled water, but that in turn clears normally that would have been potable water. So now we can basically, for lack of a better explanation, we could resell that water to potable water customers. So that adds up to another $41,000 or almost $42,000. So our total revenue could be around $77,000, which is not a, that's a pretty big number. Unfortunately, it's not big enough. This is just the direct construction cost that we estimate. It's an estimate, but the best estimate we can make. We're looking at just direct costs. This is to put the pipe in the ground and to build a pump station. We're looking at something over $10 million. That's just direct. And when you factor in engineering and profit for a contractor, et cetera, you might be getting up toward $18 million for capital costs to implement this. Also, there'll be O&M costs because between the pipeline, which all brand new pipelines, they all get leaks and that kind of thing. So time to time, we got to go and fix leaks and that kind of thing. And we got to power the pump station, which again results in a yearly cost. Basically, every year we run the system, and that yearly cost is estimated a little over $100,000. And just if you just look at, just looking at O&M cost and revenue, you can see this already doesn't work. The profits we operate at a loss without thinking about spending $18 million up front, unfortunately. So for better or worse, that one was a non-starter. We went back again. We really wanted to look this backwards and forwards. So we said, well, let's look at. I know we took it offline 10 years ago, but let's look at where we stand today, what we know and don't know. Can we put this tank back in service and get good use out of it as a potable water storage? In 2018, which is after we decided to take this off, we had Allen Plummer update our water distribution model, and they came up with a bunch of different capital projects we needed to do to kind of maintain our system integrity. One of those was a new storage tank, 1 million gallons elevated storage tower, in the southeast part of town, which is kind of in the general vicinity of where Lindsay Tower already is. So we said, okay, there's something there. If we had, we bring Lindsay Tower back, can we somehow either delay the southeast tower or maybe make it smaller? There was potential there for some savings, so we wanted to look at that and kind of run it through. Pretty much there were two options. Again, because of that, we showed you at the beginning that dead zone in the tank. We couldn't just bring it back as is. We'd have to do something. And what we looked at, basically two alternatives. One is basically going back to what we had, which is basically gravity feed. We fill it up and it just sits there and cycles and that. because we're worried about water quality, we probably have to add a mixer in there to make sure it kind of circulates and you don't get bad water. And we'd also, because of that siltation there, probably every year or two, or probably 2 years, we're thinking, we'd have to take it out of service and actually clean it out. The silt tends to build up in the bottom when it doesn't cycle well. So we're thinking there would be a cost there as well. We'd have to regularly come back and kind of clean it out in the off season. So based on the modeling, it would do a little bit for us. It would increase pressure very slightly, increase fire flow very slightly, not even anything you'd notice, but it wouldn't harm us. And we'll gain a little bit of system storage, about maybe as much as 100,000 gallons. So we looked closer. Unfortunately, we determined the southeast tank is 1 million gallons, slated to be 1 million gallons. Tanks come in standard sizes. The next smallest size is 750,000 gallons. So even if we could reduce it by 100,000 gallons, we still doesn't get us down to 750,000, so we're stuck with a 1 million gallon tank, unfortunately. There was one bit of good news. You look at the bottom, I just underlined, it would allow us to defer construction of that new southeast tank by about 5 years, that's something, it's a benefit, that's money. So we're gonna look at that, we're gonna do a net present value analysis, look at that. The other option we looked at was to build a booster pump station. Actually, this way the tank would cycle, you have to pump it, but at least we'd know the tank would go up and down when it's supposed to. There is a more capital cost to that, and there's O&M cost because the pump station takes power, so we'd have to pay to power it all day, every day. Based on the modeling, it would increase system pressure a little bit, like 5%. We were thinking that's something probably not necessarily something you notice, but it's better than what it is. It's slightly better. So the good news comes down here. Well, the better news anyway. This process would allow us to reduce the size of the southeast tank. It really cut it in half to 500,000 gallons. It would also allow us to delay it 10 years beyond where we think we'll need it now. So both of these there's something there at least. So we wanted to do a net present value. First, we had to work out the cost of going back to gravity feed. We were thinking about every other year would be about 20,000 to clean the siltation out, and then about a little under 1.6 million in capital costs up front to make that work. The second option would be a little more expensive, as I said, about 2.1 million, and the O&M. This would be a yearly O&M. That's every year again for power and servicing the pumps and that kind of thing. So we from there we did a net present value analysis, and we compared the net present value of these two alternates. The first alternate was about 8.1 million. Second alternate was better, about 7.7 million. Unfortunately, the net present value of just demolishing the tank today or whatever, and just constructing the new southeast tower in a couple of years as we had originally planned is much cheaper. It ends up being a little more than half of the other two alternates, unfortunately.
That's when Councilmember Holman changed himself to.
That will change the
I'd
numbers.
love to see you try.
We'd have to rework the numbers then. But anyway, yeah, it's 3 to 3.5 million less than the other two options, unfortunately. So we just couldn't quite get there. But at any rate, and again, this is just one of the options is to demolish the tank. It's only about $300,000, which is why it ends up being such a good financial option anyway for us. Just looking at it as a water utility, obviously, we're in the business of bringing potable water to the public.
At affordable price. So
Yeah,
we're
at the
being
best
frugal.
price, exactly.
We're
We
not
don't-
thinking, it's good historical value or it looks good. We're being frugal. And so, but take that with what it is. But that's why we bring it to you guys. We want everyone to talk this over. As Councilmember Holman does have some interest of figuring out a way. Is there any other thing we could do an OU is wanting to paint it. They want to put their logo and they'll pay for their logo. So they approached us and said, man, we'd sure like to paint that one. We're like, ooh, we're getting ready to tear that down. So that's kind of why we're rushing this in front of you, to see if we could pull it off fast enough. And
And there's something maybe something we can do, and we'll kind of run it by everybody, and we can kind of see what you're thinking. As I said before, one of the options is basically we would turn the tank over to the city. We have no more use for it, but we could just basically make it a monument, for lack of a better word. Just fill it with sand. You can paint the outside, make it look nice, and it would cost. I mean, there'd be a cost involved. It would probably cost about 1.2 million, including engineering and everything else. Which again, we could not, unfortunately, as a utility, we can't justify just with our utility hats on at any rate. But, let me see, yeah, we can't, unfortunately, we can't justify spending that kind of money. And here's just a kind of a summary of what we've been talking about. As I said, the first two options just didn't work. And for us, again, as a utility, we're looking at option 3. But there's still a question. Option 4 is it's an option, and we think there's a way that we could at least kind of help this decision along. Unrelated to this project, we have a couple projects related to tank painting about to go out to bid. We're going to be recoding Robinson Water Tower right up the street here. And OU has approached us for our other tanks. They'd be willing to pay us, pay the cost of putting logos on some of our other tanks, which we'd allow them to do. And we're working with them to figure out, can we bid our tank plus their logos under a single contract, ideally get the best prices and, all those kind of good things. What we could do, if we're bidding that anyway, at the same time, we could add 2 more alternates to that bid. One would be an alternate just to demolish the tower. The other alternate would be what it would cost to paint the exterior of the tank, as we kind of discussed, to make it a kind of just a standing billboard. The question would be, from our perspective, we're going to pay $300,000 to demolish this tank regardless. Whether we pay to actually demolish it or kind of put it aside to assist in painting the tank, we could probably make that work as well. Just to kind of give you an idea, numbers kind of to avoid confusion. Based on these are estimates, obviously we get bids, we get hard numbers, but this is best of our knowledge. These are the numbers we would use. $300,000 to demo the tank, $1.1 million to paint it, just paint the exterior to make it look nice. We could pay $300,000 of that, because that's what we'd pay anyway, regardless, if there was funding from the general fund for $824,000, which is the difference, the 1.1 million less our $300,000. And we'd be willing to then turn over the tank and we could, along with $300,000, you could still have that nice little-
Hotel bed tax money for public art.
There you go.
I was definitely thinking public art.
And then another thing is by bidding the package, it might come in cheaper than our estimate.
Yeah, we
because you
hope-
have
yeah, ideally.
mobilization, and they might be doing 3 of them or 2 of them and say, oh, I could do it a little cheaper. So our numbers will probably be high if you package that.
And the good thing is, you wouldn't have to make a decision totally today. We'd get actual bid numbers. We'd be able to present you with numbers that this is what it's actually gonna cost. This is what you'd actually have to pay. This is what we'd actually pay. And you could decide if it was something you wanted to pursue or not at that time.
Well, there's a thing running around in my head that OU is very nice about, wanting to pay to get their logos on there. Would they help us with the paint? And so,
That would
I
certainly-
don't know what that'd
that's
be.
a
but
worthwhile
that's my
conversation.
form.
Mine's gonna be way shorter than yours. What would OU's contribution be to it, towards that?
The logo.
Round numbers, and again, it's hard to tell because the market in this kind of business kind of changes rapidly. But we were guessing around 50,000 per logo. So yeah,
Okay.
so about 50,000 theoretically, or, ideally, at least 50,000. You could probably look.
On the other side, would it just be on one side?
It could be on both. We could, I guess that's up to them and to us. If you could put your logo on one side, and we could put something for
I'd
the
say
for the
city.
city as
Public
well
art,
if we wanted to.
yeah.
We'd have to pay for it,
Yeah.
but that's definitely an idea too.
Thank you.
Okay, so my thoughts on this were, one, that I did grow up right around this water tower, and I currently live, I can see it from my back door every morning, so I feel like it's a real historic piece of Norman, and it sits on the top of a hill next to the track, so it's real prominent. When you turn off of I-35 onto Lindsay, you can see it from the bridge, and then when you're coming into Norman from the lake area on Lindsay, you can see it too, so it's kind of a place, marker. And then it's in every television shot of the stadium that they ever show during a game, like of an aerial, you could see it right
Really
there.
trying to sell it.
And so, and then just, we all know, Norman's reputation or image when it comes to water, which I think is somewhat unjust, but a rusting water tower, I don't think helps with that at all, especially when so many people drive by it and see it all the time, and especially when they're students who aren't from Norman. And so my hope all these years has been that we would be able to use it for reuse, for watering Reeves Park and the golf course and the other properties that they mentioned. And then presented to me just a few weeks ago that might not work out well, but we could basically spend $350,000 to tear it down, or if we could come up with this amount, we could keep it and use it as a giant mural. I mean, it doesn't even have to be just a white thing with two logos on it. It could be anything that we could think of. But my ideas of it was, I could have OU and SEC and then the city of Norman, or just like our other water towers have on the other side. And my hope with paying for it was the amount that the Utilities Authority can contribute. Maybe we could match that at least with general fund. And I've talked to OU, Holly at OU, and she says there is some interest from the foundation and some other donors that might be interested in contributing. And then I was thinking too, like, what public art, if the Arts Council, Norman Chamber, NEDC, Visit Norman, I mean, anybody that thinks it's a good idea that might want to chip in some to get it done. My hope was that we could get it done by the first game of the season, which might be aggressive, but
And that,
just thinking we've got all
that's
these new-
doable. I mean, it'd be
Yeah.
tight. It would be tight.
just thinking we got all these new
But-
visitors coming to Norman for the first time, and the impression that a new freshly painted water tower right there could leave compared to what's there now. So so that was my goal, is to try to find a way to get a coalition of people that would be willing to chip in to get it done. And then preserve a piece of Norman history and have a giant art thing.
And it's right by Norman's camp.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think, I know that Councilmember Holman has really been looking for this for a long time. We've been talking about what its potential use could be. And I think, given all of the things that he just said about like partners and who might come to the table, and like public art is really important in Norman. And I guess all of that, I won't reiterate any of the things that he just said, but I'd be interested in seeing what the bids would look like, because I think that will give us a more robust kind of answer on what is this going to cost, and then also be able to tell other people like, hey, can you come to the table with, X amount, or, whatever, and say like, this is what it's really going to cost us. So I'd be interested in exploring that through that bid process that you're already looking to go out towards.
Because part of that water reuse that's still an important conversation. It just doesn't fit this scenario.
Yeah.
Because I think we're gonna have to do that, even if we save 70,000 gallons or whatever the number was that you came off. That's money that's water to the good side that we're selling to customers that we can do stuff. It's never gonna pay for itself. But when it comes to us, it's actually got a cool factor to it, because we're using reuse water. They seem to object about the idea of putting it in the lake, even though it won't hurt you. They don't like that. But putting it on a golf course doesn't seem to bother them.
So, we did get that communication from Sophia in Congressman Cole's office. And, I mean, I don't know if water reuse is gonna be a sexy conversation in DC, but that may be worth us adding to our list to say, we do have a water reuse project on the books. So we'll float that by DC and see what happens.
And then we don't even need a baby tank. I mean, just enough to pressure it. But anyway, I forgot who's first.
I was just gonna say, you mentioned to me that it's structurally sound though.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's not at risk of collapsing or anything. It's-
I don't know if we were clear too. Plummer, the engineers did this for us. They did the numbers and the calculations, and they're into trying to set up reuse systems for
Yeah.
cities.
Yeah, they're
So-
relative experts on that.
That's whose numbers we're using here. It wasn't our numbers. We paid professionals to do this, so.
So, and I would say, if we're able to say we have half the cost covered now, community partners, can we get that other half? That would be ideal, I think.
I would agree.
Save the clock tower. There's merch that can be sold.
The train.
Yes, sir.
Future.
The only thing I'm going to say about the two options is that it gives me pause to spend $300,000 on something that we get no value out of, other than just to make something go away. And so if we're going to spend money, let's get something out of it.
Yeah. And I don't know, I obviously don't ever remember Norman not having that. It's
Yeah.
always been there. It's one of those things. It just, how to navigate by it, as you mentioned, and stuff like that. It just always, it needs to stay there as long as it can. And if it's still competent, and the steel's still competent, it'd just be a pity. Remember, you took that one down that was way south on 9. And that doesn't look right.
How old is it?
Yeah, we're not sure, and there's no nameplate on the tank, which tells you it's pretty old. It's usually the nameplate, somebody must have pried it off at some point, so we're not quite sure exactly how old, but it's old.
It predates me, so
I would
that's
guess it's the
dinosaurs.
oldest one, or it might be slightly younger than the two that are on the north base, but that would be my guess. So it's the oldest one.
Shape of it suggests that it is.
Yeah, it's definitely old.
They
Yeah,
call
it's
it a
definitely
witch's
an older
hat or
style.
something.
We couldn't get one built like that today, looking like that today.
On the inside, demo. See what happens. Roll the dice.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Is that, yes, sir.
Good, I think,
Yes, sir.
so if I'm doing the numbers right, 330 from NUA? If
Yeah.
we kicked in 350 from the general fund, that would leave $474,739, and you said a 50 per label possibly from OU, so.
Yeah, something to that effect, yes.
We would need to come up with 375,000 from somewhere.
or cross your fingers and the bids come in.
Yeah,
And if they come
hoping,
in
so
lower,
again,
then,
that's,
yeah.
yeah, these are estimates, so
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
definitely
maybe they
want.
come up,
We
we
can figure it out of the upcoming budget and just cash flow it.
Okay.
get paid back, so, okay.
Yeah, I'd definitely like to take advantage of the other water tower work and see if we can combine and get
Yes.
some
Yeah.
savings there. So at least take that step.
Yeah.
We can definitely do that.
We'll schedule a follow-up as soon as those bids come back hot off the press. We'll be at the very next, whether it's a special session, an off-council Tuesday, or pre-council, whatever it is. We'll get it to you the very next meeting.
Does anybody disagree?
Very good. Thank you.
Hearing none. Perfect.
Thank you.
Item number 2. Consideration of adjourning into executive session is authorized by Oklahoma statutes, Title 25, Section 307B3, to discuss possible purchase of real property located at 601 South Carter Avenue. Do I entertain a motion to adjourn out? Okay,
Second.
thank you. We are now in executive session. Or will- Good evening, and welcome to the City Council, Norman Utilities Authority, Norman Municipal Authority, Norman Tax Increment Finance Authority, meeting of March 12th, 2024. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Ball?
Present.
Councilmember Schuler?
Here.
Councilmember Montoya?
Here.
Councilmember Grant? Here. Councilmember Nash?
Here.
Councilmember Foreman? Here. Councilmember Holman?
Here.
Councilmember Peacock?
Here.
Mayor Hykla?
I am here. Would you all please join me in a pledge of allegiance? Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Item 1, a proclamation proclaiming March 18th, 2024 as Public Transit Professional Appreciation Day in the city of Norman. I need a motion to acknowledge receipt of the proclamation.
Second.
I have a motion and second. The motion on the floor is to acknowledge receipt of the proclamation. Council members, you may cast your votes.
All votes have been cast, and the motion to acknowledge receipt of the proclamation passes unanimously.
Thank you, ma'am. I'll read the proclamation. A proclamation of the mayor of the city of Norman, Oklahoma, proclaiming March 18th, 2024 as Public Transit Professional Appreciation Day in the city of Norman. Whereas public transit benefits everyone in the city of Norman by reducing traffic and parking congestion, improving air quality, and making our city more equitable and accessible to all. Whereas public transit fills an important role in our community by getting people where they need to go from work and to school and to medical appointments, grocery stores, and other essential services. And whereas both City of Norman and Embark public transit professionals manage a fleet of vehicles each day, maintain on-time route performance, assist residents in understanding and using the transit system, and play an integral role in economic development and driving the community of Norman forward. And whereas the duty of Embark Norman bus operator is to safely maneuver transit vehicles through unpredictable traffic, tough weather conditions, and very tight spaces, while exercising caution and following the laws of the road to maximize the safety of their passengers, and serving as upstanding examples of safety, courtesy, discipline, and effective communication as they perform their duties each day. And whereas City of Norman Fleet Transit maintenance staff provide expertise in the preventative maintenance and upkeep of a fleet of buses, vans, and shuttles for the safety of customers, visitors, and the community. And whereas the Embark support staff provide excellence in customer service, dispatch, and ensure the integral role of public transit in the transportation of residents and visitors of the city. And whereas the City of Norman Transit administrative staff work diligently on improvements to the city's transit system, including vehicle procurement, grant management, and service changes. And whereas the City of Norman public transit vehicles travel in excess of 450,000 miles and facilitate more than 400,000 passenger trips annually in Norman. Now, therefore, I, Mayor of the City of Norman, Oklahoma, do hereby proclaim Monday, March 18th, 2024, as Public Transit Professional Appreciation Day in the City of Norman, and invite members of the public to share their appreciation for these professionals as they make use of Embark Norman services. I'd like to recognize Taylor Johnson. He's all dressed up. I didn't recognize him.
Go ahead. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for this proclamation. I know you all know me, but I'm excited to introduce some of our staff here tonight because you don't get to see them very often, and they do the real work out there that I get to boast to you about every month. First, I want to mention in the proclamation a number that many of you probably haven't seen before, that we provide in excess of 400,000 passenger trips every year. So our previous record for fiscal year is 330,000. That was last year, and that matches pre-COVID. and we're on pace to be in excess of 400,000. And actually, the past 12 months, January through February, we have exceeded 400,000. So I didn't make that number up, and I hope you all are proud of that. We are seeing real numbers behind the changes that you all authorized in the support you've given the last 5 years. So moving to our staff member here, I have Edwin Seda. He is a supervisor for Embark, provides guidance to our bus drivers every day and does a bunch of tasks that I don't see. Norma Lewis is one of our bus drivers, and I'll go ahead and introduce all the bus drivers. We have Elvin Lowry here as well. They're the ones that the customers interact with. They have a hard job. They have to play customer service. They have to navigate while people like me try to drive around them and do things they're not supposed to do, right? So they have to watch out for them. They do an incredible job. Vicki Jamison, she's a scheduler for Embark Plus, and she makes sure people get the rides they need on that service every day. Next, Scott Nichols. He ensures that we have a professional-looking bus inside and out every night after the buses come home. Him and his team are there cleaning the buses and ensuring they're fueled for the next day of service while we all go home to our families. And then lastly, but not least, we have Jeremy Wilson with the city's fleet maintenance team that makes sure we have safe buses put on the road every day. So I appreciate the proclamation. I appreciate your support, and I echo the proclamation that you all approved, in that we say thanks to these professionals when you see them, not just March 18th, but every day. So thank you.
Yeah. All right. 1, 2, got it.
Daryl's little shiny face over there. Sorry.
Oh, you're. Next item on the agenda is council announcements. I'll start with Ward 8.
Thank you. Just a reminder that this is the second round of the strongest town competition, in which Norman is up against Davis, California. So please get out there and vote for Norman to become this year's strongest town winner. Thank you.
Couple things. First, I want to congratulate Norman native Christopher Bell, NASCAR driver, for his win Sunday in Phoenix. He's one of the best ones, and it's really cool that he is from here, of all places. So if you're not a NASCAR fan, you might tune in just to check him out when you have a chance. Also want to congratulate Norman resident and local musician AJ Harvey, who appeared on The Voice last night and got 2 of the judges to turn around for him. So he is advancing. He hasn't been able to tell us how far he goes. It was filmed last summer. But he plays every Thursday night at the Deli with the Biscuits and Groovy group. So if you want to come see him, Thursday nights at the Deli, and be sure to check out that episode of The Voice from yesterday to see a Norman person on there. Very exciting to have so many Norman people doing well out and abroad and making our city look good. So also want to remind everybody that on March 28th at 4 p.m. here at City Hall, we have the Community Planning and Transportation Committee, which I chair. And in that committee, we get the monthly report on ridership from the public transit system. We talk about ongoing projects in public transit, funding, plans for the future. And then we also get updates on road construction projects. If you're curious about how long one is taking or when one is going to be done, tune into that committee meeting and we'll definitely talk about it. If you have questions or comments, concerns, suggestions about transportation in Norman, driving, walking, biking, buses, whatever it may be, feel free to contact any of us, and we'll make sure that it gets on the agenda for discussion. And if you have questions, we'll make sure those get answered. We'll also be talking about this month traffic collisions in the city of Norman, what areas of the city are hot spots for collisions, what intersections in Norman may be the most dangerous when it comes to that, where fatalities happen. Many of us know how dangerous Highway 9 is. Anybody that's lived here for a number of years or grew up here like I did, it's been a constant issue for as long as I can remember, as far as the number of people that have been involved in accidents, the number of people that have been killed. There was another fatality last weekend, and another one that happened back in August. Both involved people crossing the center median and hitting oncoming traffic going the other direction. And so one of the things I've requested city staff is to give us the data on traffic collisions throughout throughout Norman, and looking at Highway 9 specifically. ODOT, I guess, has requested that we provide them some recommendations for what maybe could be done to improve safety on it. So we'll begin that discussion in the committee, get the real actual data and numbers, and discuss what possible solutions we could send forward to ODOT when it comes to that. And then what other intersections in Norman are problematic when it comes to that, and what we might be able to do to improve the safety. For a couple decades, from the early 90s, I would say late 80s, early 90s to the 2010s, early 2010s, there was a national trend in a reduction in fatality traffic collisions in the United States. I think with airbags and seatbelts becoming mandatory in the early 2000s, cars were being designed to be safer. I think we started to see a lot of improvement, but the last 10 years nationally, there's actually been a trend back up in more people getting killed in traffic collisions in the United States, and especially since 2020. So, for example, we had 15 people in Norman were killed in traffic collisions last year, and we had 2 homicides. We've had almost 30 people in Norman killed in the last 2 years in traffic collisions. And in the last 2 years, we've had a total of 4 homicides. So exponentially more people in Norman are getting killed in traffic collisions. And that's something we really can prevent, I think, with better road design and better education of the public when it comes to that safety and distracted driving. So I look forward to that conversation. It is open to the public. Anybody can attend. It'll also be live streamed on the City of Norman YouTube channel. Live, and you can go back and rewatch it anytime. So again, that'll be kind of the start of the official discussion, but it definitely won't be the end. And I'm hopeful we can come up with some ideas for how to improve safety, not just on Highway 9, but all throughout Norman. And then also wanted to thank the transit staff and everybody that was here and those that weren't here. As was mentioned, our public transit ridership is growing significantly month by month and year by year. More and more people are using it, and that's exactly why we changed the routes, why we opened the transit center in downtown, and why we're trying to make it more efficient and more reliable for people that need to use it for getting to work, getting to school, whatever it may be. And so we'll continue to improve that, but like I agree with Taylor that the improvements we made are showing that it's getting more people to want to ride it and rely on it for transportation needs. And then the last thing I wanted to mention was the passing this weekend of Miss Murray Quinn. She was my leadership teacher at Norman High when I was a senior, and she's the reason I attended my first ever city council meeting and school board meeting for that matter. It was a requirement of her class. I had been watching them on TV for a number of years, but I'd never gone in person until I was required to in her class. And it really changed my perspective about how city council meetings are. It's different than just watching it on TV, and helped me understand a little bit better about how the local government operated and who the people were that were involved in it. And so I've had a really close relationship with her ever since then, and her husband, Dan, or Papa Quinn, as many people know him. He was the principal at Norman High, and then he was the first principal at Norman North, and then he served on the city council here for 6 years. And I had the pleasure of serving with him for a few months when I first got elected. After a Ward 8 council member resigned to move away, we asked Dan Quinn if he would come back and serve until a new person could be elected, and he did. Was gracious enough to come back and sit up here for a few more months. And so I was real thankful that I got the opportunity to serve with him and that I've got to be close friends with the Quinns all these years. Marae, her family goes way back. Her maiden name was Andrews. Her family is definitely related to Andrews Park, Abe Andrews. So she always made sure to tell that story, which was really, really interesting. And so anyway, she's somebody that I think will be greatly missed in Norman. I know I will, and just wanted to mention that she passed this weekend and how great of a person and the impact that she had on me personally. Thank you.
Councilmember Foreman?
I can't follow that, Mayor. My condolences to the family. Thank you for talking about that, Councilmember Holman. My only announcement tonight to Ward 6, April 27th is our big trash day. So if you are a Thursday trash pickup person, April 27th, I know we get really excited. I'm going to talk about it every week until it comes. So that's all. Thanks.
Councilmember?
No announcements this week, thank you.
Councilmember Grant?
Yes, good evening, Ward 4 and City of Norman. I hope everyone who braved the chill and the rain enjoyed last Friday's art walk. Some points of interest that come from emails and in-person discussions. I got an email from a downtown business owner about a customer with 2 children, one in a car seat and another young child who were hit by a car in a crosswalk. They were released from the ER, a little worse for wear, but okay. Working with that business owner to investigate options for families to park closer if possible, but ultimately, in the long run, and I communicated this to the downtown business owner, but when we talk about the future of a two-way conversion on Main, the study of which we are budgeting this year, I imagine a safer pedestrian experience, especially for young families. I definitely appreciate the play pit and would like to see people using that location because I think downtown is for everyone. Second, I've had some emails and in-person conversations with Ward 4 residents and business owners, a set of whom hosted a fundraiser for Gaza last month, who are calling for their local electeds to join other cities in issuing a ceasefire resolution. I know there have been OU student protests, and tomorrow there's an OU student-led teach-in-style event. I highlight all this to say I would vote for a permanent ceasefire resolution, but I'm only one of 9 votes. However, I know there are organizers in OKC calling people to attend city council meetings to demand such a resolution from their city leaders. So I expect it will be a matter of time before we see that kind of demand in Norman, especially since last night was the first night of Ramadan. And I bet this issue will be on many minds. Last, I just want to highlight visitnorman.com. There are a lot of events listed in and outside of Ward 4. I won't do a rundown, but if you're an art supporter, make plans to check out the annual One Art event on March 23rd. This year's Out of This World theme, Area 51. You can bid on art for auction, purchase tickets, and more via normanarts.org. Thank you.
Councilmember Montoya?
Good evening, Norman, Oklahoma, and Ward 3. So I just have a couple of quick announcements. First, if your polycart service is on Monday, Big Trash Day for you is April 6th. And if your polycart service is on Tuesdays, that is April 13th. And lastly, please make note and save the date for April 21st from 3 to 5 p.m. will be a Ward 3 Town Hall at the West Side Library, located at 300 Norman Center Court. Again, that is April 21st from 3 to 5 p.m. And so everyone here with us and watching online, thank you all for being here.
Councilmember Schuler?
Yep, I guess it's spring cleanup, big trash day announcement. I had that on my list too. So in Ward 2, I believe all of Ward 2 is Tuesday polycart service. So again, April 13th is your spring cleanup day. I also wanted to highlight something that came in the utility bill this month. I know not everybody opens up their bill because some people pay them online or they have recurring payments, but often you'll see we've got the polycart dates and everything that go out in the utility bill. But this one came from the communications department, and it has a lot of good places where you can find information. So Norman News, where you can get all of the press releases that go out from the city. It tells you how to sign up for the city manager's weekly updates, which has a lot of good information about upcoming projects. You get the police reports in there, kind of the updated numbers and data, lots of interesting things. It also shows you how to sign up for the emergency alert system for the city, and then some various numbers for different departments that you might need to utilize. And then also all of our social media, and there's also a QR code here to find all of that information. So if you're ever interested in what's going on in the city, it's not because there's a lack of information, I think, out there that the city is putting out there, but just figuring out where to find where that information is located. So if you haven't opened up your utility bill, go ahead and open that up, and you can get a great resource. And then finally, just wanted to highlight, like Councilmember Holman always does, about his committee. So I chair the Oversight Committee, and we meet on the second Thursday of every month at 4 p.m. And we talk about the emergency shelter update, and then we've got 2 items on the agenda for this week. One, which will be a presentation from the Cleveland County Health Department regarding the Shred the Stigma program. And then we're also going to be talking about parking requirements for accessory dwelling units this month. But if you are interested in any of those things, please watch the meeting or come in person. That's all I got.
Okay, and just to round it out, if you're a Friday trash service, your polycart, your spring cleanup will be on May 4th. So I think that's most of my ward. Also, we will be having an e-waste collection event the first week of May, right? First week of May? Star Wars Day. Okay, there's Star Wars, yep, May the 4th. So anything with a cord. So start gathering that. I've already got an old microwave and 2 TVs just waiting to bring down there. And then the last thing I have is tomorrow morning from 8 to 9, myself, Councilmember Holman, and the mayor will be at Coffee with Council at the Chamber of Commerce building. So if you're interested in that, we invite you out there, and that's all I have.
Mayor has none. Consent docket. This item is placed on the agenda so the city council, by unanimous consent, can designate those routine agenda items that they wish to be approved or acknowledged by one motion. If any item proposed does not meet with the approval of all council members, then that item will be heard in regular order. Staff recommends that item 2 through item 18 be placed on the consent docket. Need a motion to place items 2 through 18 on the consent docket.
So moved.
Have a motion and second. Motion on the floor is to place items 2 through 18 on the consent docket. Council members, you may cast your vote.
All votes have been cast, and the motion to place items 2 through 18 on the consent docket passes unanimously.
Thank you, ma'am. Councilmember Schuler?
Yes. Item 18 is related to an application for opioid abatement grant in partnership with the Virtue Center. As a board member of the Virtue Center, I have an actual conflict on this item and need to recuse pursuant to -103D of the city code. So I'll be voting on the rest of the consent, but recuse from item 18.
Got it. I'll entertain a motion to allow Councilmember Schuler to abstain from item 18.
Second.
Have a motion and second. Motion on the floor is to allow Councilmember Schuler to abstain from item 18. Council members, you may cast your vote.
All votes have been cast, and the motion to allow Councilmember Schuler to abstain from item 18 passes unanimously.
Thank you, ma'am.
Approve.
Is that a motion and second?
I do, and I also have a question for one of them.
Okay. What is your question?
On item 12, the Jenkins project. Where we're at on that, if anyone is prepared to talk about it.
Please.
Or like when we expect where we're at in the timeline, when we think it'll start, and all that stuff.
Sure.
I've people ask about, we're not doing it before football season starts, right? And I said, I don't think so.
Scott Sturts, Interim Director of Public Works. That's a pretty loaded question right now. we're still finalizing, just getting all the easements with the university filed. We'll get that done. That'll move us forward. They're currently doing the relocation of all the utilities, OG&E going underground, then AT&T and Cox following, as well as ONG relocating. OU has relocated all of their utilities, so they're now clear of the project. And we're working now on completing the environmental. We're expecting to have the public meeting in April for that, which will get us to the point that we're wrapping that up. We can't even consider going out to bid until we have that done. In addition, we're also working on plans. We had a lot of changes as we were working with the university and a lot of extra work that had to be done. Now that we've got all that settled, we're ready to complete the plans, move those forward, and they'll have to go through the Department of Transportation review. So we're hoping late summer to be able to go out to bid, maybe earlier if we can get things compressed a little bit. So as far as an actual date, a lot of that depends on when ODOT allows us to move forward, so we don't have full decision-making on that on our own.
It's a 2-lane street now, so I imagine that even if we started work during football season, that the existing 2 lanes would still be there. Is that?
We always try to keep a lane of traffic in each direction on every project. It's just very hard. I mean, we could move a lot quicker if we could close roads and just do it. But that does restrict traffic, so we do try to keep one lane open at all times, unless it's for a very short period, but that would be our goal in this project.
Okay, and we're still planning to do the realignment on Constitution and all that too in front of the new.
Absolutely. The university, that's one of the things that we spent a lot of time working with the university on, was because they own all that property that we'd be relocating Emhoff and Constitution to the new roundabout right there at the new Loves Field. It took a lot of effort with them to get that coordinated, but we're there now, and that is definitely part of the plans.
Very good, thank you, Scott, I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
And if you've been to the new softball stadium, we'll soon, relatively soon, have a nice new street, couple new streets redone and all that, that'll kind of match how nice that new stadium is, so, thank you.
Any other questions from council? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve. Now we're just voting? All right. Make my marks in the right place. Motion on the floor is to approve the consent docket. Council members, you can cast your votes.
All votes have been cast, and the motion to approve the consent docket passes unanimously with Councilmember Schuler abstaining from item 18.
Thank you, ma'am. Recognize Councilmember Foreman.
All right, after 4 years, I finally get to say this. Okay. Pursuant to Section 2103D of the city's code ordinance, I need to recuse from both the discussion and the vote of items 19 through 21 because I have an actual conflict related to my employment.
Thank you, ma'am. I'll entertain a motion to allow Councilmember Foreman to abstain from items 19 through 21.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and second. Motion on the floor is to allow Councilmember Foreman to abstain from items 19 through 21. Council members, you may cast your vote. You didn't get any go?
All votes have been cast, and the motion to allow Councilmember Foreman to abstain from items 19 through 21 passes by a vote of 8-0 with Councilmember Foreman abstaining.
Thank you, ma'am. Item 19, a resolution amending Norman 2025 Land Use and Transportation Plan to remove property located at 1720 North Porter Avenue from the low-density residential designation and place the same in the office designation. I'll entertain a motion to adopt or reject the resolution.
Motion to adopt.
Is there a second?
Second.
Your mic's not working. Do I have a second?
You had one, we got one.
Oh, I did, okay. Hearing's off, sorry. Is there a representative of the applicant to make,
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Tony Blatt with ADG Blatt Architects. On behalf of the applicant, happy to be here this evening. Happy to have the opportunity to work with staff, planning commission to get to this point. Owner is looking for the opportunity to purchase the property so that they can then build a medical facility, which is one of the two buildings that's located on the property. But in order to purchase the property, they needed to understand that the zoning would be allowing that kind of a facility. So that was the request for rezoning, which then ultimately ended up with a replatting process. We went and had a meeting with the adjacent property owners in which we discussed and implemented some of the comments that they had made into our plan. And then we showed that information discussed during planning commission and incorporated into the final document that we have before you this evening, the colored site plan. Happy to answer any questions or give any input with respect to the way that we've approached this project.
Questions from council? Councilmember Holman?
Okay. Maybe questions for our staff, but the site plan that is in our documents, would we be approving that as it is if we vote for this tonight?
Your agenda is the current copy of the SPUD ordinance. That includes as an attachment, Exhibit B, the site plan, and it adopts it explicitly as part of that ordinance.
So if we approve it tonight, there's no coming back. This is what would be done.
It would have to come back as an amendment.
Okay, I have a lot of concern about this site plan, actually, especially compared to the single-family neighborhood that I once voted to be built on this site. How many parking spaces are in this proposal?
I believe there's approximately 240 parking spaces. I don't have them counted. I know that there was a question about that has come up during planning commission. We did not adjust the number of parking spaces, but once we have an idea of what the building is going to look like, we understand completely if some of those parking spaces needed to be converted to landscape islands, we'd be more than happy to do so.
Part of my concern about this PUD is that we don't know what it looks like. And usually with a PUD, we know what the building is probably going to look like before we approve it. I noticed there's not a sidewalk on the eastern side, on the Porter Avenue side of it, that would generally be required of a property that develops with that.
On the eastern side?
Yeah.
Happy to incorporate that, show that as amended, and be happy to make sure that working with staff, I get that incorporated into the property as a part of this, as a part of the approved SPUD.
Okay. And then there is a row of trees that face Porter there. There's a row of trees on the south side too. And then there's that elm tree that's in the corner, I think that the neighbors were questioning about or wanting assurance on.
Correct.
But the row of trees that is fronts Porter was something we required the previous applicant to preserve as well.
I wasn't aware of that. We have a landscape border along Porter. We plan to plant plants along the frontage of Porter, maintain the landscaping border, the trees that are on the south side of the property line and the large elm tree in the northwest corner. If the trees along Porter, I don't know their exact alignment, their distance, could they fit? If they can fit within the landscape border that we've identified, I don't see any reason why that would be an issue to maintain those trees rather than planting new trees in that alignment.
Yes, that, for me, that would be a requirement, especially because I voted to make the previous person do it.
Okay.
To keep them, they are mature and they're in a straight line, and they would definitely help if there's going to be parking in the front right there.
Okay.
To buffer that and to provide shade too. So would we need to have that written in, Catherine? Or,
I think there are places they could amend the PUD narrative to add that in. It's covered there with landscaping and the buffers, and even trees are mentioned, I believe. So that would be where the amendment should be made.
can we make sure that's in there before we vote for it? Or not?
What I had you saying, if I may clarify,
I don't.
As
vote-
amended with sidewalk on the east and.
Yeah, along
addition-
Porter, a sidewalk
Along
along
Porter.
Porter. There's not one there now, but we would generally, I think the previous development was gonna be required to put one in, if I recall.
Okay, and the addition of landscape islands in the parking area, not you didn't say which,
Yeah, I don't know about, yeah, I mean, landscaped islands in the parking would be great too, especially since we're talking about potentially changing our code anyway for that. But if they'd be agreeable to that, I think that would help. And then the row of trees that fronts Porter, along Porter there, so.
I believe staff understands that there is a sidewalk along Porter currently. I don't have that in my,
Is it brand new? Because there is not one on Google Earth, not on this property.
no, the Masonic Lodge does, but it,
There is one in front of the Masonic Lodge, and then it ends again and doesn't pick up again until after Mimosa.
if
Yeah.
the sidewalk is there.
Where it
we
goes
will-
up to this property, actually from Porter, or from Robinson, the sidewalk is continuous all the way to this property.
If the
And then it
sidewalk,
ends, unless we've done it recently, but,
if it exists, we will retain it. If
Okay,
it's
wait a minute.
damaged, we'll replace it, and if it's not present, we'll build it.
okay, I'm getting a closer look here, and, okay, it's right up against the street, and it blends in with the street itself. Okay, so a sidewalk is not gonna be an issue here then. So just the row of trees in the front, it's written in that the trees on the south and the elm tree that the residents were concerned about, that would be preserved.
Let's see. Section C4 of the PUD says, the large trees between the existing Masonic Lodge and the proposed interest in development will be preserved if possible. The large elm tree located in the northwest corner of the property will remain in place as part of the development landscaping. Then it talks about the 15-foot wide landscape border to be incorporated.
Okay, and what does "if possible" mean?
We do not plan to disturb them.
Okay.
We don't plan to do the alignment of the roadway as such that it will be north of them, and we don't plan to touch them. But absent force majeure, if there's something that was to occur outside of our hand.
And then the detention ponds that are on the west end of it, those were they part of the previous development that we approved?
I believe that there was a detention pond.
Trying to recall.
There was a proposed detention pond up in the northeast corner of the property. And then I think there were some other smaller detention areas within the previous submittal, but there was one in that northeast corner.
And then this proposal has another one in the southwest corner of the property too.
And then they're also proposing some parking lot detention, and those will be going to landscape areas, and those landscape areas, they are proposing to do rain gardens to help take out some of the contaminants and reduce some of the water.
Okay, those were the primary concerns. The coverage of, do you know what the impervious surface or open space percentage is on this property?
We are less than the language included in the SPUD. I don't remember if it was 75% impervious as a maximum, but what the language that we included in our SPUD, we are less than that.
Okay, well, those points that I mentioned were the main ones, and then just, again, concern that generally with a PUD, we have more detail about what it is we're approving. It's kind of the benefit of a PUD usually is that it's more detailed than a standard rezoning, where if we just rezone it to commercial, you could really build anything that fits in the long list of categories that goes into commercial. And I have voted for things before that were just a rezoning, and then what was built was completely different than what we thought was going to be built, which is frustrating. But one of the reasons I like PUD so much is that it kind of gives us a real actual idea of what's happening, and for the neighbors too. So if we're able to kind of include some of those issues in this before we approve it, I would definitely feel much better about it.
We did restrict the uses that would be allowed as an attachment, and this first building, which is the only building that is being built at this moment. The second building is, we don't plan to build a parking lot for it or the building until there's actually a tenant that would come forward. But this is going to be a medical clinic.
So it would just be the first one,
The 22,000 square foot building that fronts Port.
okay, and the back half would remain undeveloped?
It's going to remain fallow at this moment.
Okay.
With the exception of we will build the detention pond.
I appreciate it. Those are the questions I have right now about it. Thank you.
Councilmember Peacock?
Yeah, kind of similar line of thinking. Sounds like a lot of these items could be addressed through an amendment tonight, but I think my question is for Ms. Walker. How do we reconcile changes to the site plan? Because I think the applicant even alluded to that, they haven't designed the buildings yet, and when they do, the site plan is going to change some. And so how do we approve the item tonight without seeing site plan changes?
Yeah, what you'd be approving tonight is the site plan we have in place that's attached to the PUD. So I don't know that it can be reconciled. If we know it's going to change, it would have to come back for an amendment.
Okay. I know that you're trying to seek zoning tonight. Is it possible to come back and make another application for the site plan itself?
If we could get zoning tonight, so that we would know that we could be able to purchase the property, that is what the owner is trying to do. We understand preliminary plat was a requirement as a part of this. We believe in our conversation with the owner that our building is going to be very close to the rectangular footprint that we've shown, but obviously we haven't shown a point of entrance, a point of arrival. There's some architectural features that are going to, it's not going to be a rectangle. It'll have some facade development. But ultimately, if we could have the zoning approved and we could move forward with the purchase of the property, knowing that we could put a medical clinic here and we would work through with zoning, I believe the owner would be fine with that.
Do we have the flexibility to do that tonight? And the reason I ask, and I've got a little trepidation, is because, when we approve the SPUD and the site plan and everything that goes with it, that stays with the property in perpetuity for the life of the property. And so whether or not you guys are the ones to actually develop it or not, the person to take it on next would inherit this site plan.
I understand.
And so it's just really critical that we get this piece of the project nailed down up front. And so, I don't want to delay you guys any further. I know you've got, balls in the air you're trying to keep up there. So,
Sure.
Ms. Walker, do we have a path with that?
So what the SPUD says is the site development plan for the property is concurrently submitted with the SPUD and incorporated herein as an integral part of the SPUD, and development of the property shall be constructed as presented thereon, subject to final design development and the changes allowed by 36.510, which I was trying to pull up. I don't think that's a valid citation. We don't have a 36.510. Do you have it pulled up? Okay, sorry. No, if you want to speak to it, that's fine. I don't need it carried, no. I can find it, but it's not the site that was in the PUD.
So Jane Hudson, Planning Director. So I don't want to go through this entire list, but so under administration, it says that the Planning Director shall be permitted to approve minor amendments and adjustments to the SPUD narrative or site development plan, providing the following conditions are satisfied. And then it goes on and it talks about the land area allocated to non-residential uses not increased or decreased by more than 20%, floor area, open space, screening, height. There's several things in here, and I was just wondering, if that's something that we could work with. I don't know if you guys want to take a minute and look at it and see if it's what would meet your needs.
Of the items you just listed, I think it would.
And maybe we could meet together.
I'd be open to that.
Any other questions from council? Councilmember Schuler.
So one of the other things on the SPUD narrative talks about fencing. And it talks about a site-proof fence. Is the applicant open to doing a masonry wall? I'm just thinking about the use between the residents and the, more commercial kind of medical facility property.
I tried to see if I could close that gap. when we met with the adjacent landowners, we talked about making sure we had a 6-foot site-proof fence, and then on this side of it, making sure we had a landscape buffer, so it wasn't just the fence. The incorporation into the masonry wall, I don't feel like I have the authority to spend the owner's money without their voice. We definitely are in for making sure that it's site-proof, making sure that it landscape buffers with that. I don't know how I navigate that at this point, because I really hesitate to spend money without authority.
Sure, I understand, but you did talk to the adjacent property owners, like in the neighborhood, and they felt comfortable with what you're proposing.
Yes.
Here, and was that at a pre-development meeting or a separate
It was at a
meeting?
pre-development meeting.
Okay. I mean, normally these are things that we would talk about, but I think if there's consensus from the property owners, I feel a little bit more safe and secure, as long as they were, consulted and talked about what this site was gonna look like and what their buffers were gonna be.
Yeah, it was brought up. It was not on our original plan, not by the fact that we didn't think it was a good idea, we just didn't have it on there. So it came up in the meeting and we conceded that we would definitely do both the fence and the landscape buffer in conjunction with each other.
Okay, thank you.
This is an opportunity for members of the public to speak on this item. Madam Clerk, do we have anybody signed up?
Ben Plummer signed up, but I assumed it would be if he had questions. I didn't know if he was an engineer on the project, but Cynthia Rogers? I missed half of it, so no comments. Stephen Ellis?
Stephen Ellis, Ward 4. I think the discussion that we've been having tonight about the particulars of this SPUD go some way towards sort of showing that the worries that I've been expressing every week about how we do PUDs and SPUDs in Norman are pretty accurate. Remember, the way the laws are written is that these are supposed to be the result of negotiation, where the applicant gets a certain kind of leeway in terms of standard zoning in order to provide something pretty special. And it seems like not only are we not sort of looking for anything special, we're kind of having a problem even figuring out whether or not this is meeting any of the desiderata that we have. I want to raise one additional point on this. If I read the item correctly, we're looking at a medical office, essentially. And boy, is Norman going to have a lot of that right in that neighborhood as soon as Norman Regional abandons the Porter campus and heads over to the west side. So we're taking things out of residential, which is something that we've talked a lot about needing. We're putting new property in commercial, where there are a bunch of abandoned commercial properties just right down Porter there, and including the one that the city tried to buy and failed to buy. So there's actually a lot of stuff right there right now. So to the extent that we're changing the rules in order to enable this, I think it's important that we get exactly what we want. And if we're going to add to the stock of medical commercial on that side of town, I think we should get it exactly right. So if there are any qualms about what's being preserved or how it's being put together, which is what I've been hearing, I think you should ask the applicant to sort of come back later. I would ask that someone propose that we postpone this until we get the negotiations that are supposed to be involved in SPUD and PUD zoning actually completed to everybody's satisfaction. So that's my suggestion to you tonight, is sort of postpone this until we do what we're supposed to be doing with this kind of zoning. Thanks.
Evan Dunn?
Thank you. I would like to associate myself with everything that was just spoken by Dr. Ellis. We need some visuals. The audience needs a visual. whether or not this passes is kind of beside my point. I think that we need to have food foresting requirements for every zoning change, for every plat. And this is a peach tree. 7 to 10 years it'll produce, and it'll be beautiful. Thanks.
That's all, Mayor.
Any final questions?
So I was actually looking through Ms. Hudson's planning book here, and it talks about changes are allowed up to about 20% of the site plan that we approved tonight. I have a hard time quantifying what the changes would be if we're going to change the site plan. I don't know how do you say it's going to be less than 20%. If it were me, I would love to take the 2 weeks to breathe a little bit, hammer some of this stuff out, come back 2 weeks. And so I am going to make a motion to postpone this item until a date certain of the next council meeting, which would be March 26th, 2024.
Since they're companion items. Postpone items 19, 20, and 21. I have a motion on the floor to postpone items 19, 20, and 21 until March 26th, 2024. Do I have a second? Oh, I did have a second. Is there any discussion from council on postponement? All right. I guess we ought to vote. Oh. Anybody in the public want to speak to this item? They're not running.
Postponement.
Yeah. Council members, you may cast your votes.
Motion to postpone items 19 through 21 until March the 26th passes by a vote of 7-0, or 7-1, excuse me, with Councilmember Ball voting no and Councilmember Foreman abstaining.
All right. Item number 22, an ordinance 0232445 upon second and final reading, amending special events to include a film or television production event as a type of special event, establish a film permit and associated fee for the film or television production special event, allow the complete street closures for limited durations, for film or television production events, make corrections to grammar, sections, references, and formatting, and providing for the severability thereof. I'll entertain a motion to adopt or reject the ordinance on second reading, section by section.
Motion to adopt.
Second.
There was a second?
Yes.
Good. Ms. Ashlyn Wilkerson.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. It wasn't too long since the last time you heard me speak about this ordinance change. So just briefly, I'll give you a background to kind of recenter and know where we're at. This first came to Baca in February 2023 from Visit Norman, kind of informing you about this film-friendly certification process. Then you heard from us at a study session on February 20th of this year, where we told you, Sarah Kaplan informed you about the film certification and the film permit and how that will look on our online systems. And then I discussed these ordinance changes, and then the first reading was last council meeting on the 27th. Essentially, the film-friendly certification process is a 3-step process. Visit Norman will be responsible for the first 2 steps, which is being the primary point of contact and as well as maintaining a list of locations that film and television producers can see and attract them to Norman. We are doing the 3rd step today, which is ensuring a film permit gets established, and we have to make changes to the special events ordinance in order to do so. And so there's about 4 major substantive changes in order to do this. The first is just adding language in the definition section. As you can see in section 1 of the annotated ordinance you have in front of you in your packet, just establishing that the film or television production event is now a type of special event that is possible. The second change is announcing that there will now be a film permit attached. If you're going to do a film or television production event, you'll have to fill out the addendum to the special events special events permit that already exists, which is the film permit. The third is discussing the fee structure for the film permit, and kind of taking your advisement from our study session. We based it off of production days. That way, if there's a low amount of production days, things that are smaller scale, student films, things of that nature, there's no cost impediment for them to do those things. But the larger scale, major blockbuster films that will be here for multiple days, kind of, having more of an economic impact, they do have some fees associated. For 4 to 15 days, it'll be $25, 16 or more, $50. And then the last change is just ensuring that there's a street closure process that can be entirely closed for those filming events, so there's not random flow of pedestrians for a limited duration, to ensure that they could have closed sets. And then the bulk of the changes that you see in that annotated document are all just needed updates, facelift to make it kind of current, gender neutrality language, lots of grammar changes, wording edits where needed, changing internal section references to make sure that the correct section of the code is actually referenced, and then just kind of clarity, reorganizing to make things clear. And that's all I have.
Thank you, ma'am. Are there any questions from council regarding this? Yes, sir.
I guess my biggest thing is when it comes to OU students, student films, those are not going to be major productions. I mean, if it's just like a small student documentary, and we want to ensure, so will they still have to apply?
Yes,
So
if they're doing,
So what's the criteria, I guess, to
Yeah.
to determine when somebody will actually have to get it? If I walked outside with my cell phone and was, I'm doing a documentary on what the streets look like here, am I going to have to come in here and apply before I can do that?
that's not the intended purpose. Intended purpose is more things that are going to be shot, edited, and then produced.
I mean, if we had like diners, drive-ins, and drives come here,
That would be,
right, that would be
yes.
something. But I
Correct.
just want to ensure that, we're not hindering anybody's First Amendment rights to
Oh.
go out and shoot film, and, I don't want somebody to get in trouble because, we don't like what they shot, and they were, shooting film for 2 days. But it was, a student group we didn't like, or they had an opinion that we didn't care for, so we decided, hey, you didn't get a filming license. That's a misdemeanor under this section, and we're going to charge you. So how can we ensure that does not happen?
Valid concerns. All I can address is if any member of the public is going to engage in any kind of filming activity and they have concerns about whether or not they need to get a permit, Sarah Kaplan has all the answers. She has been a resource for many people just in other special events as well, whether or not you need to actually apply for a permit or not. But your everyday kind of TikToking, Instagramming, things of that nature, kind of expressing your First Amendment rights, that's not the target of the permit.
Okay. Well, I understand it's not the target, but, that's.
There
that's a
wouldn't be
slippery slope
necessarily any
to where-
enforcement mechanisms that way either, if that makes sense.
Any more? Okay. This is an opportunity for members of the public to speak on this matter. Do we have anybody signed up?
Cynthia Rogers? Is Ben Plummer here? Okay. Stephen Ellis?
Steve Ellis, Ward 4. I don't get to do this very often, so I figured I would come down and say, yes, let's vote yes on this. This seems like a really good idea. If people are going to close down the streets, let's do it in a organized way and get some money for it. So go team.
Yeah, I'd suggest us eliminating the fee and think about incentives. Don't we want more creative people working?
From council? I'd just like to thank Dan Shem and Stephanie Brinkman for the work that they've done for nearly 2 years to bring us to that point and to build up all these things. Of course, Sarah and all do a marvelous job, and I think it's a wonderful opportunity for Norman to be able to offer this. And they do, if for this to get done, we'll get them incentives. And so there's some good. Anyway, motion on the floor is to adopt the ordinance on second reading. Council members, you may cast your votes.
All votes having adopt the ordinance upon final reading passes unanimously.
Thank you, ma'am. I'll entertain a motion to adopt or reject the ordinance on final reading.
So moved. Second.
A motion and second. The motion on the floor is to adopt the ordinance on final reading. Council members, you may cast your votes.
All votes having adopt the ordinance upon final reading passes unanimously.
Thank you, ma'am. Yay. Item number 23, a preliminary plat for Hallbrook Addition, generally located at the southwest corner of the intersection of East Rock Creek Road and 24th Avenue Northeast. I'll entertain a motion to approve or reject the preliminary plat.
Motion to approve. Second.
Yeah. Is there a representative from the applicant available?
Good evening, Council. Christopher Anderson with SMC Consulting Engineers. We also have the developer, Trey Bates. We've read the staff report, very thorough. We agree with that. Be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Questions that you may have? That was an easy one. This is, you might, he changed his mind. You might stick around just a second because we're going to ask the public. Is there anybody from the public that signed up to speak that may have a question? Isn't it right there?
Cynthia? Okay. Evan? Paul Wilson? Okay. And that would be all. And now we're back to Steve.
Councilmember Holman.
Yes, just clarifying, will improvements be made to Rock Creek Road because of this addition? I know there's an existing neighborhood and this is just another section of it, but since it fronts Rock Creek Road, will the developer be required to make any improvements to Rock Creek Road there? And I assume they'll have to put in a sidewalk too.
Scott Sturts, Interim Director of Public Works. We actually have an ongoing project in the 2019 bond program that will be widening this roadway, and we'll be taking care of those improvements. So in this case, when the final plats come forward, we'd recommend deferral so we could use those funds towards that project instead of having it done in piecemeal fashion.
Perfect. Any idea, a timeline on that project?
I do not. That's one of the later projects in the overall bond program. We are starting to look forward and get down to those bottom projects for design, but it's still several years out.
Okay, so yeah, all right, perfect, thank you.
Okay, the motion on the floor is to approve the preliminary plat. Council members, you may cast your votes.
All votes have been cast, and the motion to approve the preliminary plat passes unanimously.
Thank you. This time, next item is miscellaneous comments. This is an opportunity for citizens to address City Council. Due to Open Meeting Act regulations, council is not able to participate in discussion during miscellaneous comments. Remarks should be directed to the council as a whole and limited to 3 minutes or less. Who do we have signed?
We'll start with Cynthia.
I decided I had something to say after all. Cynthia Rogers, Ward 4. Just this afternoon, I was at the Disability Resource Fair that was held at the Well, and it is amazing how many resources we have, and community groups working to build community resources, activities, and connect people with resources in our county. But one thing that came up with discussions I had with people that were there was the inaccessibility of this building, particularly the bathrooms. And I challenge any of you to hop in a wheelchair and try to get in and out of the women's bathroom. I find that's completely unacceptable. That's not diversity, that's not inclusivity. We ought to be able to figure out a fix of the door. So I'm going to urge you to fix that and take that seriously. Somebody shouldn't have to ask repeatedly for that to get addressed. So put this on the top of the list, please. Thank you.
Stephen Ellis.
Steve Ellis, Ward 4. I had a couple of things that I wanted to mention today, and it's really almost more like announcements than anything. But I had an opportunity to sit down today with a major from the Norman Police Department to talk about some issues regarding unhoused folks in Norman. And we disagreed about a lot of things, but we actually ended up agreeing more than I thought we would about the sort of really pressing need for providing more housing for people in Norman, in particular temporary housing for people who are on the streets right now. And one of the points that was made that I thought really resonated with me was that, you know, the Norman police are not particularly fond of being sent to some place to sort of trespass people and not being able to tell people when they're asked, sort of, well, where can I go? What can I do? And I think it's becoming a little bit more clear to everybody involved that there's just really a serious lack of resources in Norman for unhoused people, and in particular, things that are better than the circumstances that people are currently in, and that's what really matters. So the quicker we can get on either expanding the Gray Street shelter or finding a new place that's at all reasonable that people will use, I think the better for everybody. And I think at least the officers who were in line with the major that I talked to today would agree with that. Second issue, I just found out today that the University of Oklahoma's president, Joe Harris, hosted a sort of rollout kind of event for the Arena 2.0 building. The actual basketball arena has plans now. I guess this was in late February, and a couple of people on the dais were there. But I don't know who else has sort of heard about this. So just for, you know, as much for the audience at home as anything, that plan is still alive. Evidently, there hasn't been any change in the financing program. They're still asking for $200 million in a tax increment financing district that will take 100% of both the sales and the property taxes. And they still haven't released any of the economic impact studies. But look for this to start coming up again in May, although ultimately I think it's going to become before the council in July when the new council is.
Evan?
Council, Evan Dunn, 1400 Garfield Avenue. So I have the book Breath with me. Cynthia mentioned the well, and they have a lot of great resources. I taught 2 classes there on the power of posture last month, and I'm going to be teaching 2 more this month on the 21st at 7 and on the 24th at 7. You're all welcome to attend. I love to come here. I do. But there's always a little bit of fear, and the experience of facing that fear, which is facing a new chemical calibration, needs to be taught. And this is what James Nestor writes here towards the end of his book. Through all of my travels and travails, there is one lesson, one equation that I believe is at the root of so much health, happiness, and longevity. I'm a bit embarrassed to say it has taken me a decade to figure this out, and I realize how insignificant it might look on this page. But lest we forget, nature is simple but subtle. The perfect breath is this: Breathe in for 5.5 seconds, then exhale for 5.5 seconds. That's 5.5 breaths per minute for a total of about 5.5 liters of air. You can practice this breathing for a few minutes or a few hours. There is no such thing as having too much peak efficiency in your body. That needs to be taught. We need to be screaming that from every platform. Do you watch my Instagram? I'm doing cold showers. Why? Because that's a rep. That's activating these stress chemicals that we need to have the experience of feeling in order to know how to respond. This is the power of posture. You can posture your way to a sense of liberation. Think about the founders. They loved Democritus and all of the Roman republics. Why? Because that was their yoga. They're articulating ideas and they're respiring. There must be something powerful and transformative in democracy. We feel it. Now, these ideas deserve to be at a bigger level. Do I need to run for Congress? I'll do it. I know it costs money. Anybody out there want to be a part of this? We have the knowledge, and we can't let it wither.
Paul Wilson.
A hard one to follow. Paul Wilson, Ward 1. I'm glad Dr. Ellis brought up some stuff about housing, especially for the homeless. I had a call with somebody last night who used to be a Norman resident. She was pretty well involved in the city. We had a nice conversation for about 2 hours, especially about affordable housing. So we kind of looked up some data, and we went to the median income of Norman, Oklahoma. I sent it to a couple people, and they were just as shocked as I was. I'm not sure if anybody knows this, but the median single-person household in Norman, Oklahoma is less than $30,000 a month. If you were to go by the national standard on that, the most that they should be able to afford for like any kind of housing is only $750. That's for a single individual person. But now that also includes single moms, single dads, people who are taking care of somebody that's disabled because they only have one income. Well, I don't know about you, but there's not too many places in Norman that you can rent or even buy where your mortgage or rent is going to be under $800 a month. The household income is less than $60,000 a month or a year. So in order to rent a home to facilitate a dual income, you're looking at about $1,495 a month is what you should be spending. Most of the developers that are coming to Norman right now, they're building $300,000 homes, which would almost double that mortgage or rent. So what we need is we need developers to come in and start building homes adjacent to what Norman income is. When was the last time we had a developer come in and want to build 2-bedroom, 1-bath, small homes that are starter homes? They're not building them. They're coming in and building these big 2,000, 2,500 square foot homes that nobody in Norman could actually afford. So who are they building for? Oklahoma City to have them come down here? Tinker Air Force Base to have some of the military guys come down here? What about the people in Norman that are struggling already to find affordable housing? It's not fair to the Norman people that they're getting excluded from being able to find a good place to live. And if they can't find a good place to live that's affordable, what happens next? All of a sudden, in a dual income, that $60,000 gets cut in half because something happens. They're on the brink of homelessness now. We already have a homeless problem. We don't need to amplify it.
Paul Arcaroli.
This without my glasses. Hello, I'm Paul Thomas Arcaroli. I live in Ward 3, and I'm a nut job for Norman. Exactly 1 week ago, we had a vote. I like that vote, really. Not because it went my way, oh, that's nice. I like the vote because what happens when we do vote. What happened was our community had a conversation. We had a conversation about what was best for Norman, and I liked that conversation very much. It turns out there are a lot of nut jobs in Norman. It makes me very happy. Now, it's not lost on me that all of you who are elected here to the city council and all of you who work day to day to support the city must also be nut jobs for Norman. Because I'm sure it's not about the fame or the money. And I want to thank you all for that, I really do. Now I stand here to respectfully ask all of you to bring OG&E back to the table and get the fair deal that Norman deserves. Nut jobs will happily approve that deal. Thank you very much. Oh, one more thing. I do have a little gift for all of you. So if you would please accept this as a positive, supportive memento of this occasion.
Sir, would you please give those to the clerk and she'll give them out, please? Would you please give those to the clerk and she'll give them out? All right, do we have anybody else on the phone? We're adjourned.